I've driven every road inside the 6-mile radius, 25,000 streets. I can take you from the gasworks to the Fly without checking a map. I've done nights for 11 years and I've carried every kind of person you can imagine. Drunks, bankers, couples who scream at each other the whole way to Heathrow, tourists who think Tower Bridge is London Bridge. But some of my passengers weren't people at all, and the worst part isn't picking them up. The worst part is that they don't always get out. Let me tell you about the 3 fares that ruined my life, one by one, in the order they happened, because there's a pattern I didn't see until it was too late. My name's Ray Callahan, 53, born in Bermondsey, raised in a terrace house on Page's Walk, the sort of street where you could smell the hops from the old Courage Brewery and everyone's dad either worked the docks or drove a cab. Mine drove a cab. His dad before him drove a horse-drawn growler. 3 generations of Callahans behind the partition glass. I started the knowledge when I was 21, bought a second-hand moped, strapped the blue book to a clipboard on the handlebars, and spent 3.5 years riding every run in the book, 320 routes, every point of interest within 6 miles of Charing Cross, hotels, hospitals, theatres, restaurants, embassies, courts, churches and cemeteries. My hippocampus, the part of the brain that handles spatial memory, apparently grew larger. There's a study on it. London cabbies' brains physically change shape. We carry the city inside our skulls. I got my green badge in 2012. Bought my first TX4, black, diesel. The partition glass was still clear because no passenger had scratched it yet. I called her Margaret because every cab deserves a name, and my mum was called Margaret and she was built the same way. Wide, reliable, slow to start in winter. By 2015, I was working nights full time, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m, 4 nights a week. The money's in the nights. Extras run on the meter after 10 p.m. and you get the airport jobs, the hospital runs, the drunks spilling out of Soho at 3 in the morning waving 20s at you. The work is steady and the roads are empty, and if you don't mind the dark, it's the best shift. I didn't mind the dark. I grew up in it. My wife, Helen, minded. She said I was different after nights, quieter. She said I'd come home at 7 in the morning and sit in the kitchen with the lights off, staring at nothing, like I was still driving, like I was still looking at the road even though the road wasn't there. She was right, but it wasn't the dark that changed me. It was the passengers. The cabbie community talks, in the shelters and the caps and the greasy spoons. We do what Hendry, a mate of mine, old hand, 28 years behind the wheel, calls cabology. We swap stories, politics, football, the state of the roads, which is always diabolical. And sometimes, late at night, when it's just 2 or 3 of us in the green shelter on Kensington Road and the rain's hammering the tin roof, someone will mention the fares, the wrong ones, the ones that don't add up. Every night driver has at least one. A passenger who got in but somehow wasn't there when you checked the mirror. A fare that took you to an address that didn't exist. A figure standing at a rank at 4 in the morning who, when you pulled alongside, wasn't standing at all, was hovering, an inch above the pavement, feet not touching the ground. We don't tell these stories to civilians. We barely tell them to each other. But I'm telling you now, because I need someone to understand what happened. November the 14th, 2022, a Tuesday. I remember the date because it was the night the clocks had just gone back and London was still adjusting to the early dark. That week in late autumn when 5 o'clock feels like midnight and midnight feels like the bottom of the ocean. I was crawling along Victoria Embankment, heading east towards the city. The road was empty. The Thames was high and black and the reflected lights from the south bank shivered on the water like something moving underneath the surface. I had my 4 higher lights on, but I wasn't expecting a fare. It was 2:15. At that hour, on a Tuesday, the Embankment is dead. She was standing near Cleopatra's Needle. I noticed her because she was still, completely, perfectly still, not checking a phone, not looking around, just standing at the curb with one hand raised, the way you'd hail a cab in 1955, upright, formal, patient. I pulled in. She opened the rear near side door, the left one, which passengers always use, and got in. "Where to, love?" A pause. Then, "Rotherhithe, Brunel Road." Her voice was clear, educated, no accent I could place. Not posh, not London, not anything. Clean, like water. I checked the mirror. She was sitting in the centre of the back seat, which is unusual. Most passengers sit to one side or the other. She was dead centre, hands folded in her lap, looking straight ahead. Not at me, not at the window. Straight ahead, at the partition glass between us. She was wearing a dark coat, high collar. Her hair was dark and pulled back. Her skin was pale, properly pale, like someone who's been ill for a long time. "Brunel Road? Right you are." I pulled out, headed east along the Embankment, down towards Lower Thames Street, planning to cut through Tower Hill and down to Rotherhithe, through the tunnel. Standard route, I know every inch of it. The meter was running, the diesel hummed, the wipers scraped. 3 minutes into the journey, I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, something sweet and heavy underneath the rain and the leather and the diesel, like flowers, but not fresh flowers, like flowers that had been sitting in the water for too long. The kind of smell you get in a room when someone's left a vase on the windowsill for a fortnight and the stems have gone soft and the water has turned green. I glanced at the mirror. She hadn't moved. Same position, same angle, hands in her lap. "Are you alright back there?" No response. "Love, are you alright?" She turned her head, slowly. Not the way a person turns, not with a slight wobble of neck muscles and the micro-adjustments of balance. She turned like a figure on a music box, smooth, mechanical, one continuous motion until her face was pointing directly at the mirror. And I saw her eyes. They were dark, not brown dark, dark like the Thames, dark like something that light falls into and doesn't come back from. There were no whites, no iris, just two wet, black surfaces that reflected the amber of the streetlights the way an animal's lights reflect headlights on a country road. I looked back at the road. My hands were tight on the wheel. "Nearly there," I said, "because that's what you say. That's what you always say, even when you're 15 minutes away. It's the script. The passenger doesn't want silence. The passenger wants to know you're in control." I wasn't in control. The Rotherhithe Tunnel is about half a mile long, single carriageway in each direction, separated by a wall. It runs under the Thames between Limehouse and Rotherhithe, built in 1908, low ceiling, yellow lights, the kind of tunnel where the air feels thicker and the radio cuts out and you can hear your own heartbeat in the space between the engine and the tarred walls. I entered the tunnel. The radio died. The yellow light strobed across the cab in steady intervals, and the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not in the way cold air creeps through a cracked window. It dropped all at once, as though someone had opened a door to the outside. Except I was underground, under the river, and there was no outside. I checked the mirror. She was closer. She was leaning forward now. Her face was perhaps 8 inches from the partition glass. I could see the texture of her skin in the yellow tunnel light, and it was wrong. It was smooth. Not like skin that had been cared for, like skin that had never been used. No pores, no lines, no imperfections. Like wax, like something made to look like a woman but assembled by something that had only ever seen a woman from a distance. Her mouth was open, not wide, just slightly, a centimetre, and from between her lips I could hear a sound, not words, not breathing, a hum, a single, sustained note, so low it was almost below hearing. I felt it more than I heard it, a vibration in my sternum, in my teeth, in the steering wheel under my hands. I accelerated, the tunnel walls blurred. "We're coming up to Bruno Road now," I said. My voice cracked. I exited the tunnel. The night air hit the windscreen and the radio crackled back to life and the yellow lights were gone, replaced by the original sodium orange of the Rotherhithe streetlights. I pulled into Brunel Road, stopped the cab, and turned around. The back seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. I'd been watching the mirror. I'd heard no click, no movement, no shift in the suspension. She was simply gone. But the smell remained, that sweet, rotting, waterlogged smell. And the back seat, dead centre, where she'd been sitting, there was a damp patch, not large, about the size of a dinner plate, perfectly circular. I touched it. It was cold, colder than rain, colder than anything that should be on a car seat in November. The meter read £18.40. I drove home. I didn't tell Helen. I cleaned the seat with a rag and I didn't tell anyone. But the smell didn't leave the cab, not for 3 days. And on the third night, when I was parked at a rank outside King's Cross at 1:30, I looked in the rearview mirror, out of habit, the way I always do, and there was condensation on the inside of the partition glass, the shape of a handprint, small, female, pressed from the passenger side. The heating wasn't on. There was no one in the back. I wiped it off. It came back within the hour. The second fare was 6 weeks later, December the 29th, the dead stretch between Christmas and New Year when London goes quiet and cold and the West End empties out to the only people on the streets are the tourists who don't know the city and the night workers who know it too well. I was in Bishopsgate, heading south towards Liverpool Street, 1:30 in the morning. The Christmas lights were still up but most of the shops were dark and the pavements were frosted and my breath was fogging the inside of the cab. He was standing at the corner of Threadneedle Street, outside the Bank of England. A man, tallish, dark suit, no coat, which was strange for the temperature. He flagged me down, a proper hail, arm raised, fingers together, like he'd done it 1,000 times. I pulled over. He opened the door and got in. "Evening, mate. Where to?" "Repel Street, Waterloo. South of the river, easy run, down through London Bridge, across, left at the roundabout. No problem." I pulled out. The meter started. I checked the mirror. He was sitting on the near side, as most passengers do. His hands were on his knees. He was clean shaven, with dark hair and the kind of face that was difficult to age. Could have been 35, could have been 60. His skin was smooth. His expression was neutral. Not happy, not sad, not tired, nothing. He was watching me, not the window, not his phone. Me, through the partition glass, through the rear view mirror, directly at my eyes. I looked back at the road. "Quiet one tonight," I said. "It's always quiet at this hour," he said. "On this road. You know that, Ray." I didn't slam the brakes. I didn't swerve. But my hands went cold and my stomach went tight and every instinct I built over 11 years of night driving told me that something was wrong. He knew my name. I hadn't introduced myself. I wasn't wearing a name badge. My license was displayed in the holder on the dashboard, but from the back of the seat, through the partition glass, in the dark. You couldn't read it. You couldn't. Sorry, mate. Do I know you? You know every road in this city, he said. Every point of interest, every connection. I know the same. We're alike, Ray. We carry the map. His voice was wrong. It was the same wrongness as the woman's eyes. Not the content. The content was clear, articulate, perfectly logical. The wrongness was in the delivery. There was no breath between sentences. The words came in continuous stream, as though they were being played from a recording that had been carefully spliced to remove the silences. 25,000 streets, he said, 3,020 runs. Every hospital, every theatre, every embassy. Do you know how many cemeteries are within the 6-mile radius, Ray? I didn't answer. 47. He was right. I knew that. I'd visited most of them during the knowledge. Highgate, Kensal Green, Abney Park, Nunhead, the City of London Cemetery at Manor Park. They're points of interest. Every cabbie knows them. And do you know what connects them? He said. Not the roads, not the runs, the things underneath, the network below the network. The old river courses and the plague pits and the tunnels and the burial grounds that the buildings were poured on top of. The city remembers where the dead were put, even when the living forget. I was on London Bridge now, crossing the river. The Thames was black and flat beneath us and the lights of the Shard rose to my left like a blade, and I was driving a dead man across the water and I knew it. I knew it in my bones the way I knew the knowledge. Not through logic but through something deeper, something the learning had carved into my brain. He wasn't breathing. I was watching it for now. In the mirror, his chest wasn't moving, his nostrils didn't flare, his lips were slightly parted but no mists formed in the cold air. Rupel Street, I said, coming up. You've been noticing things, Ray. The handprint on the glass. The smell in the upholstery, gold patches when the heating's on full. You think they're separate incidents. They're not. I turned onto Rupel Street, terraced houses, Victorian, gas lamp style streetlights. The pavements were empty. They're invitations. What? This is the stop, he said. I pulled over. He didn't reach for money. He didn't check the meter. He opened the door and stepped out and stood on the pavement and looked at me through the open door with those neutral, ageless eyes. You'll get a third fare, Ray. Not tonight, not soon, but you'll get it. And when it happens, don't stop the cab. Don't let them in. Whatever they look like, whatever they say, whatever voice they use. Who are you? He smiled. And the smile was the worst thing, because it was technically perfect. The right muscles, the right movement, the right amount of teeth, but it contained no warmth and no joy and no human intention whatsoever. It was a smile copied from a photograph from something that understood the geometry but not the meaning. I'm the last one who tried to help. He closed the door. I checked the mirror. He was walking away down Rupel Street, towards the far end. I watched him pass under one street light, then the next. Under the third light, his shadow went the wrong direction. Not behind him, not in front of him, but towards me, stretching back along the pavement, reaching for the cab. I drove. The meter read £0. It hadn't been running the entire journey. Bishopsgate to Rupel Street, 12 minutes, 2.5 miles. The meter had not moved from the flag full, as though the cab hadn't registered a passenger at all. After the second fare, things changed at home. Helen said I was talking in my sleep, not words she could understand, addresses, street names, except she said they weren't real streets. She wrote some of them down. Marchmont Passage, Ven Alley, Dead Man's Dock, Coldfall Lane. I checked. None of them exist. Not on any map, not in any index, not in the blue book, not in the knowledge. But when I said them aloud, when I sat in a cab and whispered, Marchmont Passage, I could feel the route, left off Aldgate, down past the old brewery site, through a turning that isn't there in daylight. I could feel it the way I could feel the real roads, the ones etched into my hippocampus, as though the knowledge had grown, as though something had added to the map. I started seeing things on the edge of my vision during shifts, figures at bus stops that weren't there when I looked directly at them. A queue at the taxi rank, when I pulled alongside, was empty, but the pavement was warm, as though many people had been standing there moments before, and the handprint on the partition glass stopped going away. I wiped it every night. By morning it was back, same size, same position, same 5 fingers pressed flat from the passenger side. Helen asked about it once. I told her it was condensation. She touched it and pulled her hand back and said it was ice cold. "It's January," I said. "It's on the inside of the glass, Ray." She slept in the spare room after that. Not because we argued, because she said the bedroom was cold. Not drafty cold, not poorly insulated Victorian terrace cold. A cold that had a centre, she said. A cold that radiated from the side of the bed, as though something was lying next to me that drew the heat from the air. I knew she was right. I could feel it too. A weight on the mattress that wasn't mine, an indentation on the pillow. And in the mornings, when the light came through the curtains, a damp patch on the sheet beside me, circular, about the size of a dinner plate, the same as the one in the cab. February 3rd, a Monday, the worst night of the whole month of the year. Freezing rain, the kind that gets into your collar and runs down your spine. I was working late because Helen had moved out the week before. She'd taken a bag and gone to her sister's in Lewisham and said she'll come back when the flat wasn't cold anymore. The flat was always cold now. I was heading west on Commercial Road, through Limehouse, at 20 to 3. The streets were empty. The rain was biblical. I had the 4 higher light on, but I was heading home. I was done. I just wanted to get back to Bermondsey and sit in the kitchen and drink tea and pretend everything was normal. I saw him at the junction with Salmon Lane. The child, standing on the pavement. No coat, no adult, maybe 8 years old. Small, thin, dark-haired. He was standing in the rain with his arms at his sides, looking directly at the cab as I approached. Every instinct I had said stop, and every word the man on Rupel Street had said screamed keep going. Don't stop the cab, don't let them in, whatever they look like, whatever they say, whatever voice they use. I slowed down. The child was shaking. His t-shirt was soaked through and his skin had the bluish tinge of someone who's been outside far too long. He was looking at me with an expression of absolute, uncomplicated terror. Not the theatrical fear of a woman or the blank neutrality of a man. Real fear. A child's fear. The kind you can't fake. And he said, through the glass, through the rain, in a voice so small I almost missed it. "Please, I'm lost. I don't know where I am." I stopped the cab. I sat there for 10 seconds, 15, 20. The rain hammered the roof. The boy stood on the pavement. He was shivering. His lips were blue. I unlocked the passenger door. He got in. The door closed behind him with a sound I'd never heard before. Not the solid thunk of a TX 4-door latching. A softer sound. A wet sound. Like something sealing. "All right, mate. It's all right. Where do you live? Where's your mum?" He was sitting on the near side, knees together, hands in his lap. The exact posture of the woman on the embankment. Dead still. eyes forward. "What's your name?" "Thomas." "Right, Thomas, where do you live?" "Coldfall Lane." The street from my sleep, the street that doesn't exist. My blood went cold, not a metaphor. I felt the heat leave my body in a wave, starting at my chest and radiating outwards, so something was drawing it from me. My fingers went numb, my breath came out in a white cloud. I looked in the mirror. He was staring at me, the same way the woman had stared, the same way the man had stared, through the partition glass, through the mirror, directly into my eyes. And his eyes were black, not the black of a child's diluted pupils in the dark, the full, wet, bottomless black of the woman on the embankment. No white, no iris, two polished stones set in a face of something shaped like a boy. "Coldfall Lane," he said again, and his voice wasn't small anymore. It was layered. There was his voice, Thomas's voice, a child's voice, and underneath it, a second voice, deeper, older, a voice that sounded like a stone dragged across a whetstone. "I know you know the way, Ray." And the worst part, the part that broke something inside me, was that I did. I felt the route, left on Salmon Lane, down past the old gasworks, through a turning that shouldn't be there, between two buildings, into an alley that my knowledge told me was a dead end, but my new, wrong, extended map said continued. Down, not south, not east, down, below the road's surface, below the foundations, into the network underneath the network. My hands moved on the steering wheel. I didn't tell them to. My arms turned the wheel left and my foot pressed the accelerator and the cab began to move and I was not in control. The knowledge, the thing I'd spent 3.5 years learning, the thing that had physically restructured my brain, had been overwritten. The map in my head had a new destination and my body was following it the way it had followed every route for 11 years, automatically, the way you breathe. We turned onto Salmon Lane. The street lights dimmed. Not gradually, in steps, one by one. The sodium lamps flickered and went dark as we passed them, as though the cab was swallowing the light. I could see the alley ahead, between two buildings, a boarded up pub and a block of flats, an opening that I'd driven past 1,000 times and never noticed because it hadn't been there. A gap in the city, a wound. The cab nosed towards it. "Thomas," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. My jaw was clenched so tight the words came out through my teeth. "Where does Coldfall Lane go?" The child in the back seat tilted his head. The exact angle, 15 degrees, left, smooth and mechanical, as the woman on the embankment. "Down," he said, "where the map ends, where the dead roads are." The alley mouth was 3 meters away. 2. I could see it wasn't an alley at all. It was a tunnel, a descending passage, cobblestone, with walls of dark brick that glistened as though wet. And from inside it came a smell, the same sweet, waterlogged stench from the first fair, concentrated, overpowering, the smell of a river that had been sealed underground for 200 years. And I could hear something from down there, distant, echoing, the hum, the same low, sustained note that woman had made in the Rotherhithe Tunnel, but multiplied. Not one voice, dozens, hundreds, all humming the same note, the same frequency, and the vibration was shaking the steering wheel and the partition glass and the fillings in my teeth. 1 meter from the alley, I bit through my own lip. The pain, bright, hot, immediate, human, snapped something in me, snapped something loose. My hands jerked the wheel right. The cab mounted the curb, scraped along a bollard, bounced back onto the road. I stamped the accelerator. The diesel screamed. The cab lurched forward, past the alley, past the opening, out onto the orange glow of the streetlights that were still working. Behind me, in the mirror, the alley was gone. Just the pub, just the flats, just the wall where the gap had been. I was driving fast now, 40, 50, through red lights, through junctions, not stopping, not slowing. The child was still in the back seat. He wasn't pretending anymore. His face had changed, not shifted, not morphed, changed, the way a channel changes on a television. One frame he was Thomas, an 8-year-old boy with dark hair and blue lips. The next frame he was something else. The features were the same, but the skin had gone grey and smooth. The proportions were wrong. The head too large, the jaw too narrow, the mouth too wide. And those black eyes were no longer set in sockets. They were set in the shallow depressions in a surface that wasn't a face. It was a mask, a copy, a rough draft, like that face in the wall at the Edinburgh Vaults. I would later think, like something pressing itself into the shape of a person from the wrong side. "You should have taken Coldfall Lane, Ray." The layered voice, the child's and the deep one, together. "Now I'll have to take the long way home." And then, with no sound, no movement, no opening of the door, the back seat was empty. But the seat was wet, and the meter read -£12.40. Minus, below zero, below the flag fall, a number the meter was not designed to display. I pulled over. I threw the driver's door open. I vomited onto the pavement. When I looked back at the cab, the handprint on the partition glass had changed. There were 2 handprints now, one small, one large, and between them, traced in condensation by a finger that had no warmth. Coldfall Lane. That was 2 months ago. I haven't driven since. The cab is parked outside my flat in Bermondsey. I can see it through the kitchen window. The 4-hire light is off. The engine is off. Everything is off. But every night, at 2:10, the meter clicks on. I can hear it through the wall, that soft, precise tick of a flagfall dropping, and then the slow, regular pulse of the meter counting distance. Counting a fare that no one is driving, a route that no one is taking, except someone is. 3 nights ago, I went out to check. I stood at the curb in my dressing gown and I looked through the driver's window. The meter was running, the numbers were climbing, and in the rearview mirror, which I could see from outside, through the windscreen, reflected back at me, there was condensation on the partition glass, and through the condensation, I could see the shapes of passengers. Not one, not 2, many, crowded in the back seat and the fold-down cricket seats and the footwell pressed together, overlapping, and massive grey faces with black eyes and 2 wide mouths, all turned towards the front of the cab, all looking at the driver's seat, waiting. I went back inside. I locked the door. I drew the curtains. Helen rang yesterday. She wanted to know how I was. I told her I was fine. She asked about the flat and I said the cold had gone. It hasn't. It's worse. The circular damp patch appears on the bed every morning, on the sofa in the evening, on the kitchen chair when I sit to drink my tea. Wherever I sit, for however long, a cold, wet circle forms beneath me, as though I'm the one leaving the mark now, as though whatever they are has climbed from the back seat into me and is leaking out slowly, like river water from a sponge. I found something in my coat pocket this morning. I don't remember putting it there. I don't remember picking it up. A piece of paper, folded once, damp. I unfolded it. It was a map, hand-drawn, in ink that looked old but wasn't. It was fresh, wet, as though it had been drawn minutes ago. It showed streets I didn't recognise. Marchmont Passage, Ben Alley, dead man's dot, every name I've spoken in my sleep. And at the centre of the map, where all the streets converge, a single word: Cold Fall. I know the route now. I know every turning. It's in my knowledge, embedded along the 25,000 real streets. I couldn't unlearn it any more than I could unlearn the way from Gasworks to the Flyer. It's part of the map. It's part of me. And the worst part, the part I can't tell Helen, the part I can't tell anyone, the part that keeps me sitting in this kitchen with the lights on and the curtains drawn and the clock ticking towards 2:10, is that I want to drive it. I want to get in the cab and start the engine and follow the route, through Limehouse, down Salmon Lane, into the alley that isn't there in the daytime, down Coldfall Lane, down into the dark beneath the city where the dead roads are and the passengers are waiting and the meter counts a fare that never ends. The knowledge changed my brain. It grew my hippocampus. It made me carry the city inside my skull. And now there's something else in there, growing, expanding, mapping routes that leads to places the living aren't supposed to go. Last night, I woke up at 2:10. I wasn't in bed. I was in the cab, engine running, headlights on, meter ticking, and the sat-nav, which I don't have, which I've never had, which no black cab in London has because we don't need them. We have the knowledge. A screen I'd never seen before was glowing on the dashboard, blue-white, bright. It showed one destination, Coldfall Lane, 0.3 miles. I turned the engine off. I went back inside, but I could hear the meter through the wall, ticking, counting, and the distance is getting shorter.